There's a great story of two lumberjacks where every morning they start chopping wood at the same time, and every day they stop chopping wood at the same time. And every day one of the lumberjacks disappears for about an hour in the middle of the day, and every day he chops more wood than the other guy. And this goes on for months. And eventually the one who works all day, he says, I don't understand. Every day we start at the same time. Every day we stop at the same time. Every day you disappear for about an hour in the middle of the day, and every day you chop more wood than me. Where do you go for that hour? And the other lumberjack looks up and goes, oh, I'll go home and sharpen my axe. If you take an infinite mindset, it's not about how much you can get done each day. It's how much you can get done over the course of a career or over the course of a lifetime. You got to take vacations, which means you turn off your email and you turn off your phone and you do not connect to the office. Go sharpen your axe. Take a Friday afternoon off. We have something called duvet days in our company where you wake up in the morning and you just can't do it. And it's not like vacation days where you plan ahead, and it's not like sick days. Like you're not sick, you just don't want to do it. You're just not feeling it and you can't do it. And you do it responsibly. You can't leave your team in the lurch, obviously. You have to exercise responsible freedom. But we give people an opportunity, instead of lying and pretending that they have a stomach bug because they just can't face the day, that they can just call up and say, I'm taking a duvet day, and everybody goes, go, we got you, go.
Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle.
But you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best.
So today, let's learn from one of the best, Simon Sinek, and my take on his top 10 to success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, articulate your why.
I can tell you what I went through, which is what set me on the journey to sharing the message of the why and helping people find theirs. A why is like a compass direction. It tells you where you're going. We can live our lives by accident, which is kind of like getting in a ship and just sailing, or getting in a car and just driving. You'll absolutely see some amazing things. You'll stumble upon some amazing experiences, but you don't really have a sense of where you're going, any sort of direction. In other words, what's it all for? What the why does is it provides a path, it provides a map or a compass. So you will still have some of those amazing experiences, but now they have value and worth, and they're taking you towards something else. It's a journey towards something. When I learned my why, I had this tremendous calm come over me, a sense of my confidence grew, a sense that my life had more meaning than I thought it had before, and I had now the choice, a new way of viewing decisions, a filter through which to make decisions, which now I would ask myself, does this help advance my why or not? Does this help me stay on the path that I'm supposed to be on, or is this going to be a random adventure? So the why provides focus, direction, meaning, and confidence.
Rule number 3, be the best leader.
The best leaders actually are the best followers, even if they're at the highest levels of the organization. They're still in service.
Right. It may not be to a person, but to a cause,
to a cause,
mission,
an idea, a vision,
God, something.
Whatever it is, there's still some sort of something that they're beholden to, and they're devoted to, and they're in service to. So followership is a thing, not to belabor the Marine point, but. Marines, when they evaluate their leaders, they're looking for good leadership and good followership. So, for example, when you go through OCS, Officer Candidates School Selection, when somebody's for a task, chosen to be the leader of that group for that task, the Marines are watching the others as well. So they're looking to see that everybody's contributing ideas, and they're looking to see that leader takes in those ideas but is decisive, and they're looking to see that the members of the group, if their idea isn't picked, they still give their all to see that the leader's idea is successful. And if it fails, give it their all to pick up the pieces and see what they can do, as opposed to going, I told you, should have gone my way.
Right. I was right.
Or sabotaging because their idea didn't get picked.
Wow. So they go all in.
So good followership is as important as good leadership. That we respect that when a decision is made, we will give our blood, sweat, and tears to see that the decision our leaders have made will be successful. And if it fails, we will help pick up the pieces, because that's the deal.
Rule number 4, make an impact.
Having a sense of purpose, cause, or belief for our work is what gives our work and, frankly, our lives meaning. When we die, nobody wants the last balance in their checking account written on their tombstone. Nobody wants the last title on their last business card on their tombstone. That's not how we want to be remembered. We want to be remembered for the kind of person we were in the lives of others, devoted mother, loving father, these kinds of things. And we want to know that our work had an impact in something bigger than ourselves. It's a very normal human thing. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't start to think about those things until later in their lives. And I've heard this. I usually hear this from senior executives, believe it or not, where they say, I've had great success and I've done all these things, but I don't want my life to end on this chapter. I would feel like I've done something wrong, and they want to make sure that they do something powerful and impactful in the lives of others, that's how they want to close the book on their lives. What I love about this young generation is they're starting to think about those kinds of things now. It's not unique to a young generation. Everybody wants their work to matter and have meaning. I think our young generation is just more vocal about it, which is wonderful.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, show empathy.
So you say, I've met this person that I really like. How do I build trust? Well, you don't tell them all your secrets on the first day, right? We all know that you have to be vulnerable, but there's a timing, and it's a dance, and it's giving somebody a little extra responsibility and seeing how they do. And if they screw up, instead of yelling at them, be like, all right, try again. That we treat mistakes as learning opportunities rather than, and a mistake is only when you keep repeating the same error and you haven't learned anything. Where we practice empathy. You build trust with empathy as well. So empathy in business looks like this. Here's a traditional scenario. Somebody picks up the phone or walks into their office when we did that, and says, your numbers are down for the 3rd quarter in a row. We've had this conversation before, and if you don't pick up your numbers in the 4th quarter, I don't know what's going to happen. Right? That's pretty normal. Here's empathy injected into that scenario. Hey, your numbers are down for the 3rd quarter in a row. We've had this conversation before. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. What's going on?
No.
Right? Where it's about the person, not the performance. And so again, it goes back to that listening, and you are not listening until somebody else feels heard. Those things, seeing someone as human, understanding that we all have stresses and strains and egos and insecurities, and we bring all of that to work. And though we still have to be emotionally professional, you can't sit in a meeting like this because you're having a bad day. That's emotionally unprofessional. Though we still have to be emotionally professional, we're still human beings.
Yeah.
And a good leader recognizes that. And by the way, somebody on a team recognizes that too. You don't have to be a position of authority to be a good leader. Because those who may be higher in rank than us are also filled with insecurity and fear and stress and strain and ego and all that. Right? And it's okay to go up the chain of command and say, hey, are you okay? You were really hard on us in that meeting today. Instead of labeling them an asshole, be like, are you okay? And by the way, and that's the dance. It's like any relationship. It's not expected for one person in an interpersonal relationship to do all the listening. It's a dance, and it goes backwards and forwards. And you meet empathy with empathy, and you meet listening with listening.
Rule number 6, focus on your strengths.
I think very often companies can risk becoming reactive to things that happen in the marketplace, so here's a great example, right? Let's use a real life example. BlackBerry was a really fantastic company who built a really fantastic product with a really clear sense of vision, which is we make strong, secure, extremely reliable products. And if you remember, if you ever had a BlackBerry, you could throw that thing across the room, drop it on the street, and it just didn't break. It just kept working. It was the most reliable product on the marketplace. You could type on the full QWERTY keyboard without even looking down. You could send a whole email, and governments and big businesses loved it because it was really secure and really reliable. Then the iPhone showed up, and the iPhone was the new shiny object. And BlackBerry, instead of sticking to their core and their beliefs, became distracted by the shiny popularity of the iPhone, which is a completely different animal serving a completely different audience. And they started trying to copy iPhone. So they started putting apps on their BlackBerries, which what did it do? Made it slow and sluggish. Then they started coming out with flat screens. You're not going to make a better iPhone than an iPhone. And they basically destroyed their company because they completely went off the reservation and abandoned their fantastic cause. There could be two marketplaces where you have the shiny object of the iPhone that we use in our personal lives, and our companies prefer that we use a BlackBerry because it's reliable, it's safe, and it's really, really strong. And we could have had two dominant players for two dominant reasons, like a PC and a Mac. Two dominant players for two dominant reasons, for two different reasons. But they didn't. They got distracted. And I can imagine that their business people were saying, business is moving at light speed. We have to react. Or we can work to advance our cause in a different way and not become distracted. And that's part of the hard thing, which is, are we stuck in our old ways? Or are we actually sticking to our long-term vision? That's part of the difficulty of business, to know the difference.
Rule number 7, be adaptable.
I would sort of reject the concept of blunt honesty. You can be honest without being an ass. Do I look fat in these jeans? I like the other jeans better. That's an honest assessment without making somebody feel bad, for example. And we also have to get good at evaluating someone's personality. Some people are more sensitive than others. And so a good leader is able to adapt their style and how they offer information so that sometimes they have to be a little more polite to some and they can be a little more blunt with another because their personalities can take it. What we want people to do is hear the feedback, hear the input, and it's based on how they receive it, not how we like to give it. We have to be the adaptable ones as leaders. But he's absolutely right that good leadership starts with care. And I hear this all the time, unfortunately, which is, as a leader, I didn't get to choose my team, so why should I care about them, or why should I trust them? I didn't choose them. Well, you didn't get to choose your children. You love them, and this is one of the risks of leadership. Leaders have to take the risk to care. They have to take the risk to trust first. I've never in my life heard a great leader say, "Prove to me why I should trust you," to their team. It's the opposite. A leader takes the risk to trust, and it's the team who says, "Prove to us why we should trust you." That's the correct hierarchy. So yes, you do have to care. You want to see your people as human beings first. They are not the problem. They may have a problem, and inject a little empathy into the organization. This is what reflects care. So for example, I'll give you one example. So here's a pretty normal scenario. Somebody walks into an office and says, your numbers are down for the third quarter in a row. We've had this conversation before. If you don't pick up your numbers in the fourth quarter, I don't know what's going to happen. Empathy changes that. You walk into their office and you say, your numbers are down for the third quarter in a row. We've had this conversation before. Are you okay? What's going on? I'm worried about you. That's empathetic. That's the expression of care, that we recognize that someone may have a problem, but they are not the problem.
Rule number 8, build great relationships.
I'll give you a personal example. The person who sold me this property, it was the seller's agent.
Oh, okay.
Right? He was charming and nice and wonderful and lovely and helpful and all the things that I would expect. And I warmed up to him and he was apparently helping me. And then I remember distinctly at the closing, he sat there with no personality. All of his charm had left. All of his friendliness had gone. He barely engaged with me. He just wanted to be there to collect his check so he could get out of there. And I realized it was all fake. It was all for show. It was all to butter me up so that I would simply sign on the dotted line. And as a result, I will never work with him again as a buyer or a seller. I'll never list with him ever. And I probably will never work with that company again because I realized they just saw me as a number. They never saw me as a person in the first place. He was an old white guy. I mean, that should tell you a little bit of something as well. That's sort of maybe how he was raised in the industry. And by the way, the mortgage broker was no different. He was charming and wonderful and lovely and helped me get a great rate, et cetera, et cetera. And then I remember after I closed, he called me and said, "Congratulations." And I said, "Oh, thank you. That's so nice of you." And he called me just to congratulate me on closing on my house. And then the first thing he said to me was, "And if you know anybody who's looking for a mortgage, I'd really appreciate the recommendation." He never called me to congratulate me. He called me because he wanted the referral.
Like, give it a breath. You know, like, call me and congratulate me, and a week later ask me for the referral.
And see, let me tell you what sucks about that. Can I say that? What sucks about that totally is that one person colored your entire opinion.
But this is finite versus infinite.
Okay.
He could only see the transaction. He could only see get business, get more business. Get business, get more business. What he didn't understand is he's dealing with a human being, and the more that there's a relationship, I will gladly recommend him. I will gladly introduce you to my guy, right? Now I'm completely agnostic, because if you're going to treat me like a transaction, I'm going to treat you like a transaction. If you're going to treat me like a transaction, I'm going to squeeze you to get more money out of you. I want a lower rate. I'm going to squeeze the agents. But if you treat me like a human being, I'll gladly pay a higher rate because I want to work with you. And that's what infinite-minded players understand better, which is you don't have to be the cheapest. You don't have to have the lowest rate or the lowest price if you have a great relationship.
Rule number 9, develop
an infinite mindset.
What does it mean to live an infinite life? Clearly, our lives are finite. We're born, we die, we come, we go. But life is infinite. The game of life will continue with us or without us. Which means every single one of us has a choice. We don't get to choose the nature of the game. Life is infinite. We don't even get to choose if we want to play in the game or not. Once you're born, you're in it. We get one choice. Do you want to play with a finite mindset, or do you want to play with an infinite mindset? To play with a finite mindset means waking up every day and say, I'm going to be the best, I'm going to be better than everybody else. I'm going to accumulate more power, more responsibility, more money, whatever it is, whatever your metric is, I'm going to get more than anybody else. Me. And when you die, you take none of it with you. Or we can choose to live our lives with an infinite mindset, which means I'm going to leave this world, this school, in better shape than I found it. It means I'm going to devote my life to see that those around me rise. And we know that we're living with an infinite mindset because our obsession is seeing that we have an impact on the lives of the people around us. We've all had teachers, and some of you are those teachers, where 20 or 30 years from now, I can go to one of your students and say, you're a remarkable human being, you've accomplished so much in your life. How did you become the person you are today? And they will tell me your name. We all remember the teacher who believed in us. We all remember the teacher who had our backs. We all remember the teacher who saw something in us that nobody else saw. We've forgotten all the others, but we remember those couple. And that's what it means to live with an infinite mindset. It means we devote ourselves to that mindset for everyone in our lives. That other teachers will say that about us. Other principals will say that about us. Other students will say that about us. Our friends will say that about us. I am who I am today because of you, and I will commit to live the same life that you taught me how to live. And you will literally live on beyond your own lifestyle, your own lifetime. That when you're gone, others will carry your work for you. This is what it means to live an infinite life, and it is just a choice.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is aim for authenticity.
There are many people in your industry who talk a good game, they talk about relationships, but let's be honest, it's bullshit. They just want to make the transaction and move on, and they pretend that they care, and they pretend it's, you know, that they care about the relationship, when the reality is it's one and done and on to the next. And that's what happened to me. I had a mortgage broker. He sold me a mortgage. He was recommended to me. That's how most of us meet somebody, you know. And he was very nice and charming and was there with me. And then my sale went through, and he called me up to congratulate me. And I was feeling all warm and fuzzy towards him. And then as soon as he congratulated me, he said, and if you could recommend me to anybody else, I'd be really grateful. He wasn't calling to congratulate me. He was calling to remind me to put in a good word for him somewhere else. Like, if he actually cared about me and my house, then he would have just called me really excited that I got my house. Yeah. And if he wanted something from me, he would have waited a week or two to ask the favor. But it became abundantly clear to me, I'm in the human behavior business.
Yes.
He never called me because he cared about me.
Yeah.
And by the way, I will never, ever recommend him, because I realized that I was just a number on a spreadsheet. And so if you actually care about building relationships, then actually build relationships.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I was starting out in my career, I had a little marketing consultancy, and I came from an industry that pretended that they were good at everything, the marketing world. Like literally, they pretended they were good at everything, whether they were or weren't. And when I went off by myself, it was important to me to be honest. And clients would come and talk to me and say, we want to hire you to do all these things. And I'd say, I'll do that one, I'm really good at that, pretty good at that. I like doing that. That I'm mediocre on, that I suck at. I highly recommend you hire another company to do that, and I'm happy to partner with them. And it made them want to do business with me more.
Because you said no.
Because I told them what I was good at and what I was bad at, and where I was super honest.
Yeah.
And we've all had that experience where you want to hire somebody and they go, let me introduce you to somebody. It happened to me recently.
Yeah.
I wanted it was like something silly.
Yeah.
You know, I needed wallpaper.
Yeah.
He highly recommended. I called him up, he came, he gave me a quote. He's like, you know what, I'm not the best at this thing. And he gave me the number of somebody else.
Yeah.
Now all I want to do is work with him again.
Yeah.
And I keep giving out his phone number to other people, even though I actually never did work with him.
Yeah.
Because what builds a relationship is an honest broker. Honesty is such a hard thing to get, especially in a transaction business, especially in a commodity business, because it is just volume and numbers.
Yeah.
And that when you actually find an honest one, all you want to do is help them build their book of business, even though you may never do business with them. And that's what a lot of finite-minded folks in your business don't get, which is, you may never sell me a mortgage, but I'll become your biggest champion. We always talk about being a stable company, and we talk about investing in stable companies, and you know, are you stable? And you think about stability. Stability is an immobile object, you know, and so companies that are built for stability, yes, they're able to weather storms, but they don't come out stronger or better. They just come out. They get through. Building a company for resilience means that you go into darkness, but you're actually able to adapt for new times, new technologies, new cultures, new politics, new tastes, and you come actually out of the hard times stronger than you went in. Victorinox is a great example. Victorinox, many of us know them by their signature product, which is the old Swiss Army knife. And this company basically made a name for themselves on this basically one line of product. And they had other product, but this was the core. And then something happened that they couldn't predict, nor could they prepare for, which is September 11th happened. And overnight, we were banned from taking their product in our bags, in our hand luggage or in our pockets. And so many of us used to carry a Swiss Army knife in our pockets or just throw one in our hand luggage. Like we all had one. You know, every birthday for every teenager, they got at least one, right? Every corporate gift, you had a couple of Swiss Army knives. And now we were banned from carrying them, which means you're less likely to buy one to give as a gift. And so their business plummeted overnight through no fault of their own, through no market conditions, nothing predictable. But the genius of Victorinox is that they were built for resilience. And what they did was in good times, instead of giving away all the money in big bonuses, in good times, they actually saved a ton of money. And their attitude was, good times don't last, but neither do bad times. And if we want to get through bad times, we need cash. And so instead of panicking and taking loans or whatever it is, they had their own stack of cash that they'd been hoarding. So they had a little financial resilience. But then they looked at other products and they asked their people to help build up. And they started investing heavily in watches. Now we have Victorinox watches, which are much more, and it's still Swiss made, everything that they could do, everything that they knew how to do, clothing, everything, they leveraged their brand heavily and they built it back up. Also, they protected all of their people. They actually made deals with companies prior that if bad times ever happened, that other companies would borrow their employees, which I thought was genius. So they didn't lose their jobs, they just did their jobs somewhere else. And they completely reinvented their company. Now, to this day, their Swiss Army knife never really recovered. It came up back a bit, but it's now not the major product. It is a minor product that they sell because they actually came out stronger and reinvented. And to be able to do that, think about that. Coming in as one kind of company and coming out as another kind of company, very, very rare and very, very special, but very infinite-minded. When you're trying to build trusting teams, it's you recognize that you cannot enforce certainty on people. You can offer goals. People like goals, but what's important is how we get there, not just that we got there. Right. Think of it like trying to lose weight, right? There's nothing wrong with setting arbitrary goals with arbitrary dates, which is, by the way, how we build our businesses. Right. We want to hit X amount of dollars in revenue by probably the end of the year because that's when we pay taxes. It's a completely arbitrary number. Somebody might say, we could do better than that. And you're like, you're right. And then we change the number, right? Complete works of fiction. So we're striving to hit a work of fiction, right? Yeah. And it's the same when we want to lose weight. I want to lose X amount of pounds by X date. Arbitrary, right? And we're doing all the things to do that. We're exercising, eating well, all the things. We love standing on the scale. We love a metric. There's nothing wrong with that. Human beings need that. We can't run in a marathon without mile markers. It's actually unnerving. We need to know how fast and how far. So the metrics are good. And let's say you hit your goal, right? You hit your performance goal just as you had articulated. Amazing. You feel incredible. You feel like you've succeeded. Here's the problem. You have to keep exercising for the rest of your life. Right? In other words, you don't stop doing the things that you were doing. So the game hasn't ended. It was simply a waypoint. But what I think is more interesting is what happens if you miss your goal? What happens if you don't lose the amount of weight that you wanted on that date? And the answer is nothing. Nothing happens because you're probably way healthier than you are now than you were. You're probably easily, you can see the trend data. You can see you're well on your way to hitting your goal. You just picked the wrong date. You're easily going to hit it in another month if you just stick to your regime. Business is the same, which is sometimes we miss our goals, but the question is what's the trend data? Is the team working well together? Is morale high? Is some of it out of our control? Market conditions and things like that, things we didn't know about. And so if we happen to miss the number, the problem is how are we rewarding our people? And so many of us only reward our people based on if they hit the number. But what if they're begging, borrowing, and stealing? What if they simply rush at the end of the quarter to drop their prices or have some sort of promotion or have some trickery? They'll hit the number. And then we bonus them, which tells everybody else, I don't care how you hit your numbers as long as you hit them. Well, guess what kind of behavior that's going to reinforce inside our organization? Whereas if you look at the data, the trend data, and you reward somebody who's well on the path, what we're telling you is as long as you're doing a good job, you'll do well in this organization. Leaders understand that they are not responsible for the results. They are responsible for the people who are responsible for the results. And that skill set is very, very different than just trying to get people to do the thing that you know how to do better than them because you've been doing it your whole life. You have to be clear and open about what you stand for. And just like when you hire somebody, you want to make sure that when you hire them, that they share your values, that they believe in your vision. They don't just think it's corny, or marketing, but rather that they buy into it. And sometimes we'll make mistakes. And sometimes people will come and they fall in love with it after the fact, but we try on balance to bring people that we believe will get along with the people who work here because of our values and our cause. And so too is it with suppliers. I think that or clients, it's the same thing, which is we stand for what we stand for, and our goal is to attract people who believe what we believe. The more vocal we are about what we believe, those people literally will come to us. Or turn down a competitor who may even be cheaper because they would rather do business with us. And so it's okay to do business with a supplier that doesn't believe what we believe, but we have to go in with eyes open, knowing full well that this is just a transaction. You offer a decent product, you give me a decent price. This is not going to be a lifelong relationship. This is a transactional relationship. And when it's done, I'm just going to hold you to very different standards, right? Because when it's transactional, we're a little less patient when things go wrong. And sometimes we kid ourselves. You just can't do that too often. It's like if you're living a healthy lifestyle, you can have chocolate cake, just not too often. So yeah, I think the more vocal you are, the more you attract. And then you have to make decisions like you're hiring people because they're going to become a member of your family as well. This is the difference between the short-term finite-minded and the long-term infinite-minded. The finite-minded, is it the cheapest today? Is it the best relationship today? And pay no attention to the secondary or tertiary effects
and definitely pay no attention to what will happen in 5 years. Whereas that long-term minded, infinite-minded player looks at looks at something and looks at someone and says, well, you're not the cheapest, but I think we're going to get along just fine. And over the course of time, the quality of work will far outweigh whatever you paid. A friend of mine who's a consultant loves to joke about her clients that they never have the time or money to do it right the first time, but they always have the time and money to do it again. And I think when you're infinite-minded, you consider those factors from the beginning.
Let's reinforce that point, because I think it's an important one, that fulfillment is a right and not a privilege. And when we go out with our friends for dinner, well, when we used to be able to do that, you sit around and somebody says, I love my job, and everybody goes, oh my God, you're so lucky, like they won something. That statement should be the norm, not the exception. We should all get to go to dinner and say, I love my job, and it's the one person who says, I don't, that we can intervene. So yeah, I believe it is a right, and we have a responsibility ourselves to find a place where we want to work with the people that we would work with, rather than just taking the biggest salary. That we have a responsibility to take care of the people around us, and we have a responsibility to speak up and ask our leaders to work with us and create a place where people want to come to work, where there's a safe space for us to take care of each other and feel taken care of. So there's mutual responsibility all around. So when you say, how do we do it? Well, it requires constant work. It's like, how do you stay healthy? Well, I can give you a whole list of things you have to do. You have to eat right. You have to nurse your personal relationships. You have to get enough sleep. You have to exercise. You have to meditate. You have to be mindful. There's like 30 things. And you can't do all those things well all the time. It's a striving. And when one's doing well, sometimes one thing falls off. It's a striving, and it's the same. The pursuit of fulfillment is a striving. I think it's, this is why I make the distinction between fulfillment and happiness. To seek happiness is a lot easier, because happiness is fleeting. You get a new job, you're happy. You get a raise, you're happy. You win a new piece of business, you're happy. You're given a gift, you're happy. Somebody says something nice to you, you're happy. And that feeling goes away. Nobody walks around with a sense of happiness for a job they got 4 years ago. It's gone. Where fulfillment is different. Fulfillment, you can feel fulfilled by your work even if you're not enjoying it today. You can feel fulfilled by your work even if you're having a bad day, or one of your colleagues is grumpy. You can still be fulfilled by the work. It's more infinite. It's more constant. And so, whereas happiness is, the things that lead up to it sounds more like an event. Fulfillment is a striving. It's a lifestyle. And you do all these things, like having a just cause, like building trusting teams, and working to be the leader you wish you had. In other words, you see your life as a life of service to those around you, whether you're in a company, whether you're an employee, whether you're a leader, or if you're just a parent, that you see your life in service, to your spouse, your partner, or your kids, and indeed your community. What makes a community highly functional is that we view that every single person within that community sees their responsibility to serve the community, rather than standing around demanding the community does something for them. Let's say there's one person who started their own little business, a little consultancy, right? Got my shingle out. I'm a consultant, right? And everywhere they go, they keep telling you that they're better than everyone else. They keep telling you they're smarter than everyone else. They keep telling you that, the problem with the big companies is they don't have the flexibility. It actually gets to the point of being annoying, to the point that we don't want to actually work with them because we don't believe them, right? Now let's change the scenario. You meet that same person, and they introduce themselves. Look, there's a lot of good consultants out there. Some of them are a lot better than me. But I wake up every single day to be a better version of what I do today than I did yesterday. And I can tell you that the advice I give today is even better than it was yesterday. And the advice I'm going to give tomorrow is even better. Because for me, it's an education. And that's why I love working with open-minded, wonderful clients who are partners, because what we end up doing is growing together. Right? Now, that's one person. Think about how appealing that person is. They've actually told you that you may actually get as good or better advice somewhere else. But it's who they are and who they're being and the disposition that they bring that makes them way more trustworthy, and us wanting to work with them.
And it's the same for big companies. It's got nothing to do with the size of the company, which is it's called humility and honesty. I remember young in my career, I experienced this myself when I went off and hung my shingle out, and I had a little marketing company, a little marketing consultancy. I remember going into meetings, and the client would say, "We want you to do all of this for us," and I'd say, "I'm really good at that, pretty good at that, okay at that, really bad at that. I highly recommend you hire somebody else to do that, and I'm happily partner with them for them to do that." And the clients wanted to work with me more, not even though I just told them I can't do that. Only because I was the only one who was honest. Everybody else they talked to, big or small, told them that they were great at everything, which is just not true. Nobody's great at everything. And so it's amazing. When you take the risk to be honest, it pays dividends in the trust that you build.
I think courage is external, right? The reason someone has courage to jump out of an airplane is because there's a parachute on their back. It's the external thing. A world-famous trapeze artist would never try a brand new death-defying act for the first time without a net. It's the net that gives them the courage. The Navy SEALs are considered one of the highest performing organizations on the planet. And a former SEAL was asked, what kind of person makes it into the SEALs? And he said, I can't tell you the kind of person that makes it in, but I can tell you the kind of person that doesn't make it in. He said the star college athletes who have never really been tested to the core of their being, none of them make it in. He said the preening leaders who like to delegate everything, none of them make it in. He says the guys who show up with hulking muscles covered in tattoos because they want to show you how tough they are, none of them make it in. He said some of the guys who make it in are skinny and scrawny. He said some of the guys who make it in, you see them shivering out of fear. He said, but every single one of the guys who makes it in, when they're emotionally exhausted, when they're physically exhausted, when they have absolutely nothing left to give, somehow, some way, they're able to dig down deep inside themselves to find the energy to help the guy next to them. In other words, the reason these organizations and these people have the courage to do remarkable things is not because of their internal strength. It's because they have the absolute confidence that there is someone to the left of them and someone to the right of them that cares about them. And they all know that. And it's the quality of the relationships that we maintain, professionally and personally, that give us the courage to do difficult things. Isaac Stern, the famous violinist, said, music is what happens between the notes. Well, something like trust happens between the meetings. Few people think about the importance of building trust when they go to work. Or what do I need to do today to build trust with somebody? That doesn't really go through people's minds. But we have chit-chat as we walk into the meeting. We have chit-chat when we walk out of the meeting. And we see somebody in the hall and they're like, oh, meant to tell you something. Or you knock on someone's door and be like, got a minute? And all those little innocuous interactions over the course of time, like any relationship, build trust. It's about setting up the computer, setting up Zoom and having a work session with somebody. We're not working on the same thing, but I want to work with somebody, a work buddy, or having a lunch with somebody over Zoom, or a Monday morning huddle where we talk about what's on our heart and minds, but we do not talk business on purpose, or Friday cocktails that are just voluntary. But the most important one is to just pick up the phone and call people and say, how are you? That level of empathy. Just check in on someone. And I think we neglect it because we get mired in the day-to-day. But, if you're organized or disorganized, literally keep a list of your team on a little card next to your computer and just, go through it. And have I called this person in a while and talked to this person? I'm just going to call and check in. It doesn't matter if something's wrong or not wrong. Just check in on them. Don't wait for something to break. And let people know that that there's connection and there's a way to reach out and say, I need help. Because and the most important thing is for leaders to be honest and open about their need to ask for help. And that'll work.
I think one of the things that the pandemic revealed, quite frankly, was the weakness of so many corporate cultures. I mean, we're seeing the great resignation happening. And if you read articles or listen to some of the talking heads, the prevailing thought is, well, they're getting, checks from the government, so they're not encouraged to come back to work.
or they're pursuing their dreams, which we've seen as well in our own company. Somebody wants to go be a screenwriter, and even though we have a great relationship and they love their job, they want to pursue their dreams. But the other thing that I think is underlying that it's missing, that these commentaries are missing, is that the cultures may have been weaker than we like to think they are. That the sense of belonging that people have when they would come to work is actually a lot more tenuous than we'd like to believe. So the bond that's allowing them to go off and do other things is easily broken. I think strong cultures, when there's a strong corporate culture, we recognize that I can pursue my dreams and work because I love it here and I know my team is supportive of me becoming a screenwriter or something, and I can do both. Or even though I'm making money, potentially even more money, there's so much more I get from my work. The camaraderie, the love, the support. I get all of this training on how to be a better listener and a better communicator, which is helping me in my marriage and helping me with my kids. And I don't want to lose that. Plus, I have close friends at work, and I can speak up and say, "Hey, I'm being offered more money from the government. Is there anything you can help?" The point is it becomes a conversation rather than a resignation. So I think one of the things that we're missing is this might be a wake-up call for a lot of companies, that our cultures are just not as strong as we think they are. It's been spoken about for years that millennials, and now Gen Z are just not loyal to work. They bounce around from job year to year to year. Well, is that them or is that us? Maybe if we had stronger cultures, they wouldn't want to leave. Maybe if we offered them more than simply financial incentives for hitting certain numbers, that they'd want to stay. Maybe if they felt that they were growing as human beings, there would be things that were more appealing to them than simply a bigger paycheck somewhere else. So I actually think it's a big wake-up call, frankly, that we should go back and look at our cultures and say, are we as good as we think we are?
You cannot have innovation or progress without failure. It doesn't exist. And if you truly aren't failing as you're trying to innovate, then you're probably not pushing very hard because you haven't broken anything. You're making very, very safe choices. We could never have put a person on the moon without a bunch of rockets blowing up first. I met a CFO once. I asked him the priorities of the company, and he said, efficiency and innovation. And I laughed and said, well, good luck with that. Innovation is inherently inefficient because it requires experimentation. And experimentation requires failure. Much is said about fail fast. I actually don't like the term failure. The problem with the word failure is it's like the word cancer. It's too broad. If you have stage 4 liver cancer or you have a mild melanoma, those things are both called cancer, but they are clearly not the same thing. And the same thing is when we hear the word failure. Some people think failure means experimentation, but a lot of people think failure means catastrophe. And so when we tell our company, failure is good, fail fast, that literally scares people. We don't want to fail. So I think we need a new word. We want to avoid failure. Failure is catastrophic and it should be avoided. But falling, I think we should encourage. When a kid falls off a bicycle, we didn't tell them they failed. We tell them they fell. And what do we tell them? Get back up and try again. So I don't want to tell people they failed. I want to see people they fell. And I want to encourage them to try again and brush off their knees. So I think we should fall and fall often. And I will judge the quality of innovation, not necessarily by if you fell, but how quickly you can pick yourself back up and try again.
I think some people turn off the humanity when they go to work. They may be, loving parents and loving friends and loving, children to their own parents, and yet for some reason there's a switch that they think that that's irresponsible to do at work. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily wearing your heart on your sleeve every day. There is something called emotional professionalism. If you're having a bad day, you can say, listen, I'm a little off my game today, but you can't sit in a meeting with your arms folded and be grumpy and give one-word answers. That's emotionally unprofessional. You can have hard feelings, but you can't go around screaming and yelling at people. You can have, so I think there is emotional professionalism. But I think for some reason, especially as people make their way up the ranks, they think that expressing any kind of emotion is a sign of weakness. Even that word vulnerability, we talk, it's such a common word now being talked about in the business world that you have to be vulnerable. To this day, it makes some people feel very uncomfortable. I don't want to be vulnerable. Well, all vulnerability means is saying things like, I don't know, or I need help, or I'm overwhelmed, or can you help me do this because I don't know how to do this, or I've been promoted to a position where maybe I need more training. And the reason we're afraid of saying that is for fear that it makes us look weak, which will then damage our careers. The reality is the total opposite. By saying I don't know means someone can help us. But instead we choose to lie, hide, and fake very often, which eventually gets revealed. Enough stress piled on that lying, hiding, and faking collapses either professionally or personally. We either feel the stress or or the projects that we're working on start to go haywire. And very often when we get to those points, everybody knows anyway. The amazing thing that I've learned is when you say, can somebody help me? We're surrounded by people who would love to help us. They just didn't think we needed it because we acted as if we didn't. So I think a large part of it is quite frankly fear. Fear that if I express these things, that people will think I'm not qualified for my job, where the opposite is true. And remember, when you are in a position of leadership, you don't actually have to be better at doing the job that the people you lead. You have to be responsible for taking care of them to make sure they're good at their job. But for some reason, we think that I have to be better than you at your own job because I'm the leader. Completely false. I just have to make sure that you're equipped, you have the tools, the training, and the psychological safety to be the best you can be, even if it's better than me.
When the pandemic struck, I mean, my book came out a few months before the pandemic, and so for someone like me who loves to observe and like whether this stuff is true or not, you sort of go, you sort of wonder, is everything going to hold up or not? And as an existential flex. Is something that I predicted would happen either zero, once, or at the absolute most twice in a career. But when COVID happened, we all went through it at the same time. Existential flexibility is that you're able to make a profound 180-degree strategic shift in order to continue to advance your cause. In other words, stay relevant. This is not about the daily flexibility of business. We're talking profound strategic shift here. And sometimes brought on by pandemic, sometimes brought on by changing technology or politics or culture or tastes, but you're able to adjust. So for example, it's Apple, Steve Jobs, when they're developing technology in one direction, they discover this thing called the graphic user interface that they did not invent, and they decide to walk away from millions of dollars spent and countless man hours in order to focus on a different strategic position, because Jobs believed that was a better way to advance his cause of empowering individuals to use personal computers. That's existential flex.
How do we replace our judgment with curiosity? So there's a simple technique. There are simple techniques to do this. One is write yourself a little reminder. Put a little sticky on your computer that says be curious or ask questions. You'll be amazed how well that works. But especially in times when we're judging, especially when we're in groups of leaders, we're in meetings, we can snowball into judgment really quickly. Let's say someone's performance is in decline. Immediately, they're lazy, they're stupid, they don't understand, they're a problem child. All it takes is one person to break that judgment and say, well, maybe they're going through something. And there is a technique where when you start to form a narrative about someone or about something, that you force yourself to come up with 21 possible alternatives of what could be going on in their life. So are they lazy? Absolutely. That's absolutely a possibility. Are they a problem child? Are they toxic? Absolutely. Are they are their kids struggling at school? Maybe. Do they have problems in their family? Maybe someone's sick? Maybe. Do they have medical issues that they're hiding from us, that they're too embarrassed about? Maybe. Like, my point is can you go through the exercise of writing 20 or 21 alternative stories of what could be happening, and all of a sudden we find ourselves talking about and treating that person differently. And it doesn't just come about people, it's also about decisions we're making at work. And again, in a meeting, all it takes is one person to raise a question of what if. As leaders, the more we start asking each other and ourselves, what if, or what are the opportunities, or what are the possibilities, we'll find ourselves doing that with our people. That when they come to us, instead of us correcting them and telling them that they're wrong, raising questions. But believe it or not, simply having a little reminder to be curious is really important.
When we are willing to put ourselves at risk to be there for someone, right? Don't worry if this goes south, I will be there for you. Which may mean working late, it may mean working extra hours, it may mean putting our reputations on the line. I mean, there's a lot of things that takes. But when we genuinely promise to be there for someone, and it has to be genuine, because if it gets tested, it's very easy to find out if it was genuine or not. But if it's genuine, then it's repaid remarkably. Let me give you a silly example. Let's say that, so I talk about this sometimes, which is the giving of time and energy is more powerful than the giving of money. You can't build trust with money. So paying somebody bonuses and giving somebody a big salary, though feels nice, is not earning or building any trust whatsoever. You cannot pay for trust. And here's the example. Let's say you're moving house, and one of your friends says, you know what? I want to help you. We've been friends for years. I'm going to pay for the moving van. Here's $5,000 and the moving van. Let me know how it goes. Have a great move. That's really generous, right? Another friend says, you know what? I want to help you move. And they come over the week before and they're sitting in your house, packing boxes. They're sweat dripping down their brow. They're there with you all day. They're there to help load the truck. They're there to help unload the truck. They're there to unwrap everything, right? They paid zero money. They give you time and energy, which are non-redeemable commodities. Money, we make money, we spend money, we make money back. It's a redeemable commodity. Time and energy are non-redeemable commodities. And so when someone gives us something that they cannot get back, it has a much more powerful effect on how we feel. So now both those people call you another time and say, I need your help. Which one are you more apt to help? The one who gave you money or the one who gave you time and energy? And this is a good lesson for leadership as well. Giving our time and energy is often more powerful than simply just throwing money at someone.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome.
For 10 more amazing rules from Vusi Tembequeo, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and we'll see you there.
The single most important gift in the world, in my mind, is the gift of communication. The greatest tool of influence all leaders have is communication. You cannot influence where you cannot communicate. It's impossible. So learning to communicate